to analyze the current situation of Afghanistan, the situation of especially Afghan women.
So during the withdrawal, my heart just broke and ached. I think like a lot of veterans in the United States and all around the world, frankly, because there were other countries that we were working with in Afghanistan too, the British, Germans, Australians. I think during the withdrawal, all of our hearts broke, which mine really did. And I was spinning out a little bit because I had a friend who was an interpreter who was stuck in Afghanistan, and he was begging for help, and I didn't know how to help him. And I was working in a corporate office and was basically watching it all happen on the big screen TV, like in the lounge, which I just was really uneasy about it and didn't really know what to do. So I kind of tapped into like Twitter and, just via mutual friends, talking to different people on the phone to try and figure out what I could do to help. And I think that experience really jump-started me into what I'm doing. It was so heartbreaking that I really felt like I needed to do something to help. And I think a lot of us really felt that way. I'm happy that my interpreter was able to escape and now lives in the United States. I'm very happy that the most of the Afghan female tactical platoon were able to escape. But I'm pretty upset about what happened in 2021. I actually don't think that we should have ever left. I know that's kind of a contentious opinion, but I think that there's a whole generation right now of Afghans who have never not known American protection, American economic viability. So, you have people who are plumbers, male people, pilots, soldiers, teachers. I mean, there was so much opportunity for professional life while we were there. So I'm pretty disappointed that we left. I think that there was a democracy was in place, and I feel like we abandoned Afghanistan, and it's just something I'm not okay with. So I'm closely following the resistance in Afghanistan, and I'm really hopeful that that will continue. I'm also very disappointed to hear that we've been sending money to the Taliban every week for the last few years. That's something that a lot of people don't know, but maybe it's important for your viewers to know. I think there's a huge assessment that needs to happen. I know that we have the Afghan War Commission is an investigative entity that is existing, at the federal level that is investigating the war and the withdrawal. But as far as how I feel about what's going on right now, Tim Stevens is very inspirational because he is doing God's work essentially by working with these underground schools. Also, Pashtana Durrani is a huge inspiration as well. Nazanin, can you tell me for sure, do you know, did the Taliban recently go house to house taking women's makeup or confiscating women's makeup? Do you know if that's a true story?
Yeah, I know about that because recently I saw a news in Afghan International that Taliban were there was a picture of Taliban that they in Sarpul province in Afghanistan. They were house by house. They were just surveying the houses that they should check the makeup of the women. Actually, yeah, better. And sometimes when I think now that I'm 21 years old, when I think about the situation, actually, I think that no one can really understand the women of Afghanistan because as I passed myself, yeah, according to my own experiences, when I think I was 17 years old when I get separated from my family because my family was somehow could not support me. So I went in a school that there was dormitory available for girls, and it was Republic during Republic. It was in 2010, actually, in 2020. And after that, I was in 11th grade. That the day the Taliban were coming in our province in Ghazni, actually. So I exactly remember I was the last girl who stayed in dormitory for hope of opening the door of schools. But when it was 8:30 a.m., when my teacher and the principal of our school came and told me that Nazanin, it's not clear that when those schools will become open again, so you have to go in your home. After that, I called to my father for coming and take me to go to home, and I exactly remember the day that our dormitory was so near to our district. Yes, so after that, before of that day, there was so many soldiers that they were protecting our district. The flag of our country were just, it was in the roof of the district, and yeah, but that day in 8:30 a.m. I saw that there was no soldier, there was no people and no person inside of the district. And after that, it was 10 a.m. that my father was coming to take me. But on that time, exactly on that time, I saw that the Taliban, they were riding motorbikes, they were riding cars, that they were coming, and they just entered to our district. And after that, I heard that they were speaking to the people that after that we will be here and we will govern you. Actually, this was the memory that I remember on that day, and I saw with my own eyes. And I think no one can understand as that we see that, for example, yesterday our government, our democratic government was there, but today the Taliban are here and they will just, stop us to learn. And after that, after 1 week that I returned again to dormitory, that I started to study secretly, and about 1.5 years I studied secretly my education. Every day we were in fear of Taliban, that they will come and they will close the door of the school, so no one can understand us really. And after that, when I left my school in 2022, and when I went in Kabul to get the TOEFL test, so after that, for most of the nights I didn't have any place to stay, because people were afraid of letting a girl to be in their houses, and I was without money to just, handling my situation. After that, when I was alone, and I just paid some money to rent a room, I was secretly attending in Maud and in some other educational centers, and I saw most of the time that Taliban were coming in our centers, and they were just telling us that you have to have hijabs. And most of the time, I was afraid of seeing Amr Maruf, and sometimes I skipped because they were just arresting us. When I think about these situations that I have passed, I think that no one really can understand the situation of an Afghan woman. And every time, and even today, that I'm telling about my memories from Afghanistan, it made me to feel cry, because just no one can understand us. And actually, I we were so young to pass all those memories, to pass all those difficulties. And that's why how we can grow in a situation, how we can grow in a country that there is no opportunity for women, and there is no freedom. And yeah, actually, who can understand us that what we are passing? And nowadays that I'm in Pakistan, I go to university, because I do not have a supporter. I have to always be in fear of paying the money. How will become the situation? Especially the government of Pakistan will deport us in Afghanistan. Every day the police are coming and they're checking our visas. So it's the situation that Afghan women have these days. So who can understand us? So let's just focus on the questions. Actually,
Oh yeah,
sorry for.
I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't stir something. I mean, it's an emotional topic, and it's your real life. It's every Afghan woman. It's their real life. And I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I think you are incredibly brave for continuing to pursue your education. One thing that I remember from the Wilson Center when we were watching some of the documentary that you're involved in was Pashtana. She somehow has an ability to make things a little bit more lighthearted and maybe even funny, but she said it's always a criminal activity when you're talking about girls' education. And
Yes.
that's really sad, you know, and it really shouldn't be a criminal activity, but you continue to pursue
Yeah.
your education in secret. And I think that really just speaks to the testament of your character and your bravery and your courage for doing whatever it takes to make sure that you're staying educated. And I know that there are a lot of other girls and women out there who are doing the same. So you're inspiring for all of them. The reason that I asked about the makeup is because that is a story that I saw that I thought that was real. And for me, it took me a couple days. Of course, I see that and I get mad about it. I get upset about it and wonder what can I do, you know, still. Um, but I was thinking it took me a couple days to realize, but I thought, wow, Afghan women and girls love makeup. You know, the reason I can say that is because when I was there in 2010, what did
Yes.
I have in common with the girls and the women there was makeup. I love doing my makeup at home. I used to watch my mom do her makeup, and I actually think that makeup is there's a lot more to makeup and empowerment with makeup than people realize. So, you know, that was why I asked, was because it harkens back to my experience in Afghanistan with the women and the girls, where that's what we had in common, and it shows we have way more in common than we have differences. And we really need to stick together as women. And I'm always here to support you for whatever it is that you're doing. So always let me know if there's anything that I can do to help. But I really commend you. I think you're a warrior, and you're fighting the fight in the way that you can, you know, with school and continuing education and inspiring other women and girls to pursue theirs. Um, Gosh, I had something else that I was going to mention.
Thank you so much. Actually, yes, as you said, we have many things in common, especially
Mhm.
makeup. And as an Afghan woman, it shows their motivation for lives, you know. However, despite of all the challenges that they have, but they use makeup, they use to just lipsticks, and they just to
Mhm.
sort of use the things to make them see beautiful, and it somehow shows their high motivation for life
Right.
in a situation like, yeah, in Afghanistan.
Right.
So.
And I remember actually the other thing that I was going to mention. I just want to make sure I don't miss it. I know that there are women who are actively protesting too in the streets of Kabul and all around Afghanistan. There's an online protest, you know, where people are condemning what the Taliban is doing to erase women from society, taking away their education, confiscating makeup. Like, I mean, come on. So there's definitely, I think, an outcry online, but I am very I deeply admire the women and the girls who are out in the streets protesting regularly, because that's something that happens in a democracy. And so for me, I feel like the women are shining right now, and I think that's what the Taliban is scared of, to be honest with you. Another thing that Pashtana told me one time was that they fear women more than they fear God. And I think that that's true. It speaks to the power that women have in their hearts and their souls. And, you know, protesting is an indicator that there's a democracy at work. So I am not lost on the thought that Afghanistan can have a democracy once again. There was a democracy in place, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the president by law is Amunullah Khan. I'll have to get back to you on. I can't remember how to pronounce his name, but I actually, if this is going to be edited,
Amanullah,
what's
Amanullah
that?
Khan. Yes,
Yes, yes, yes.
Amanullah Khan.
Thank you. I mean,
Yes,
technically, in
actually,
theory,
yeah,
he would be
yeah. The
considered,
woman.
and the Taliban would be considered an illegitimate government. So, I haven't lost faith that Afghanistan can have its democracy again, and that women and girls can go to school and buy makeup and go to the salon. I don't think that that's gone forever. I think that we're kind of in the beginning stages of maybe it coming back. So, I'm hopeful anyway.
Yes, thank you so much, Miss. Actually, the women are protesting. Yes, we have many women here in Pakistan and also in Afghanistan that they are protesting and
Hmm.
they are standing and actually they are fighting toward Taliban and they never accept the rules of the Taliban. So actually, it shows that uh, yes, that Afghan women do not accept the rules of Taliban and
Right.
they are still alive and they are protesting. So.
Hmm.
Do you believe the international community has a responsibility to continue supporting Afghan women? If so, in what ways they can do this?
I do think the international community has an obligation to Afghanistan and the women of Afghanistan. These are human rights violations that are occurring in Afghanistan. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Afghanistan is the only country in the world where women and girls are not allowed to go to school. So I think that America, as an institution or as a country, and the international community at large need to not ignore the human rights violations that are occurring and support education. I actually think that even commercially speaking, um, there should be even more of an outcry than we're seeing right now. But there are some really incredible organizations out there who are doing their best to amplify the voices of displaced people. For example, Displaced International is an amazing organization founded by Ambassador Ashraf Haidari, who was the ambassador to Afghanistan for Sri Lanka. And he invites displaced people from all around the world to submit an op-ed or an opinion piece sharing their personal experience in order to inform the international community at large. And some people who work in politics in other countries and such. So we need to inform the people like myself, I think, are obligated to do our best to inform the international community of what's going on and provide a place where people like you can speak to your life experience and share what you think is important to help Afghanistan and the women and the children of Afghanistan. So I think it's imperative actually that the international community steps in with what's going on in Afghanistan and says, you can't do this, it's not allowed, these are human rights violations. And um, I mean, I would like to see the Taliban totally ousted, but I don't know. We'll see what happens, but it's certainly something that we need to continue to champion the rights of women, girls, education, and what people might consider maybe more superficial or frivolous things, but being able to buy makeup and wear makeup, those are things that women and girls should be able to do.
Yes, Miss, thank you. What is the main goal of your work at Dolphin 6? So, do you plan to interview Afghan women or collaborate with them?
Yes, yes. So actually, my first interview, my mission with Dolphin 6 is to do what you're doing now, which is interview the women who were on these teams. And my first interview was with the Afghan female tactical platoon commander, and that is just an honor that I'll carry for a lifetime. That she afforded me as much grace as to allow me to interview her as my first interview for my project. And I film with some Afghan female tactical platoon members to help support their missions in life or different things that they're doing. And of course, yes, I do. I plan to continue working with Afghan women, girls, Afghan men, girls. So with the work that I'm doing right now, my first interview is with the commander of the Afghan female tactical platoon. And it's not I haven't released it yet, actually, because when I got into the editing process of my interview with her, we filmed for like 10 hours and I had to boil it down to something like an episode's worth or like an hour of something that somebody could watch. But I realized that there was just so much more information and it needed to become more of a comprehensive piece. So I decided not to release it right away so that I could continue to film and share Afghan's story at a larger scale. I'm also interested in highlighting Afghan women religious figures. So I'm also
Yes.
interested in doing like a historical figures element for my show where we would highlight, you know, Muslim women in history. So like Zainab, for example, who I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember correctly, she actually saved Islam. So, I think she would be an incredible feature, and I would love to interview women, Muslim women, to share, what they think about Zainab and what she did for their religion, their community, their culture. So I have big aspirations for continuing to work with Afghan women in a lot of different ways, but those are just some.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much. I do really appreciate. As a woman who has worked in a military environment, do you see any similarities between the challenges faced by women in the military and Afghan women's struggles? Do you see any similarities between your experience and Afghan women?
I think first and foremost is probably like the most obvious one, which is generally male dominated spaces and women entering those generally male dominated spaces. So for the team that I was on, we went to all male units and existed as only two females, at what would be considered, a platoon or a company level of just male Marines. And then soldiers or, different branches had their different versions. But for the Afghan female tactical platoon, some of those women were ANA or Afghan National Army or Afghan police before they became female tactical platoon members. Some of them were actually civilians who had no military training before they joined the platoon. So I think for them, similarly to for us, there was a phenomenon where we were entering this male dominated space and needed to be accepted by our male counterparts so that we could successfully accomplish the mission. So I think that's probably the most obvious one, but and there are probably plenty of others, but what's front of mine is as FET, which is what I was, and for the Afghan female tactical platoon, we both had to exist as women and introduce ourselves in a way that made us capable so that our counterparts could trust our capabilities and, generally just be accepted by a male dominated group.
Thank you so much, Miss. So about there are only two questions left that I want to ask you. So, how did you feel when the Taliban regained power? Did it make you question whether your efforts had made a difference?
It did. Yeah, that is something I'm always going to wonder about, I think. Because we have good days and bad days, but, you know, I think the hardest thing is the amount of lives that were lost as a result of the war in pursuit of democracy in Afghanistan. And the Taliban taking power is just so, it's just out of mind. It's an out of body experience that you really have. But ultimately, I will say that I have faith in the Afghan people. And did it make me question what we were doing there? Yes. But when I think about the women and the girls whose lives were changed because they saw just a small chance of possibility in their own life, um, and were excited about education when schools were developed, you know, I have a lot of faith in Afghan women and the children who are coming up now in these really hard circumstances. I think education is critical in that, but I have faith that Afghan women and girls and children will be able to continue to pursue their education, which I think is maybe the biggest deal. But I'm really hopeful that the Taliban will go away. I'm really hopeful that the resistance will, which there are a couple different resistances. You're probably aware. And I'm following them as closely as I can. And I hope that they develop a coalition to completely oust the Taliban. I'm perturbed by some things that are, the last administration and this administration in the United States is doing. So I think that there are some people behind the scenes that are working on some things, but it did make me question, yes, the Taliban takeover did make me question if what we were doing, like, what were we doing over there if the Taliban was just going to end up taking over again, which is a really hard thing to digest, and I don't think that I have. I still don't believe it sometimes. But ultimately, I have faith, and I'm a woman of faith, and I believe that it's almost like a different war that we're fighting now. I don't think the war is over. I think it just looks a little bit different, and we have to keep education at the front, because I do think ultimately that that's how it's going to change.
Yes.
That's a hard question
Thank you.
to answer, Nazanin.
Thank you so much. Actually, it was very nice. As a last question, Miss, if you could send a message to Afghan women today, what you would say for them?
If I could send a message to Afghan women today, whether they're in Afghanistan or not, I would say don't quit, is what I would say. Women face really hard challenges in the West and, in Afghanistan and other countries. We face a different set of challenges, but we're built differently. And I think my message to anybody that's in my audience or anybody that I interact with has always been to choose the hard thing and to not quit. I find myself doing that all the time. I find myself always choosing the hard thing, but it's because I feel like I know that it's right. And so I think even if it is very hard and it is very difficult, when you know in your heart that it's right, it makes it a little bit easier to keep fighting for that. So I know I'm not going to stop in my work and my advocacy for Afghan women and children and education and democracy in Afghanistan. I think we're all trying to figure out like what that's going to look like, trying to achieve those things, but we're all working together, and Afghan women have my support. There's a whole community behind me of veterans that the Afghan women have their support. And, I'm open to working with anybody as far as trying to figure out how can we achieve girls and women being able to go to school in Afghanistan. Like, let's get the Taliban out of there so we can get girls and women to go to school. Like, these things they're not privileges. They really should be rights. And so I'm hopeful, and my message to Afghan women would be do not quit. Keep fighting.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid, to ask for help if you feel like you need it, because there's a whole community of us out there that are just ready to champion women's education and women's rights. So don't quit would be my message.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miss. Actually, it was really nice.